Want to do better? Then it's time to change the story. Welcome to our show about new visions currently transforming the world through the confluence of art, tech, and innovation. And now your hosts, Michael Ashley and Neil Sahota.
All right, it's my great pleasure to introduce our guest for this episode, Chadney Everett, the director, architect, artist of Meow Wolf and the House Eternal. Welcome, Chadney.
Thank you. You've given me too many credits. I don't actually carry some of those, but I appreciate
I've seen your work firsthand. It's mind-blowing. Seriously, Chadney.
Thank you. I'm a senior creative director with Meow Wolf. Thank you. Yeah. And thank you for having me on the show.
Wonderful. So, Chadney, as a visionary, what is the new story that you would like to bring to the world?
If there's one thing that stands out to me, and it relates to what I do as an artist, it's that I would like to see this shared experience we're all going through bring a renewed connection with one another. This relates specifically to art. Art is in the business of connecting humans to the greater human experience. And that invisible connection point that exists between the art and the audience, and that thing that is the magical thing that lives between there that connects us to each other. I would like, in the same way that, like, to have a meaningful artistic experience, we must be open to being transformed by the interaction. We must be equally open in having a meaningful interpersonal human experience, the willingness to be transformed by our human interactions in the same way. So yeah, that.
That's a wonderful way to put it, especially in a time in which we're talking about social distancing. So how can we bring that human element in when it feels like so much of our lives are technologically based in the sense of how we're connecting? Even right now, we're having a remote conversation. How can we keep that human element alive?
It's such an interesting thing. Like, the internet is up there with the written word as one of the greatest, if not the greatest, kind of connectivity invention that humans have ever made. It like connects us in a way that only the written word comes close, I think. And yet we're seeing now that, like, it's not quite enough for a lot of people, right? Like, we crave that physical human connection, so much so that people are risking their lives to, like, go out on a beach and, like, go to these public spaces, which is, when you intellectualize it, it's silly, right? But that need is so strong with us. So, for example, like during most of the 1900s, we didn't, we had, like, there was 4 TV channels, no VCRs, et cetera. Movie theaters made sense, right? In today's day and age, when we have access to an almost infinite amount of content, why are movie theaters still here? There's no logical reason why they should still exist, right? You have to spend 6 months worth of Netflix fees to take your family to see one movie, right? So why do people go? And it's about that shared human experience, right? It's more meaningful, even when you're sitting in a theater with 100 strangers, that you went through that experience together matters. And it's meaningful to us. And so that thing, and it's especially difficult right now, right? And so a lot of us are feeling that longing for that human connection, even to just pass people on a hiking trail. When I go out for a hike after work, there's so much more right now. People are acknowledging each other, saying hi, like, even as they keep their distance as we pass on the trail. There's this acknowledgement, like, we're all in this together, right? Mm-hmm. Like, looking into each other's eyes, and, like, that thing, and it's powerful. That shared experience of this thing. And I hope that, like, ultimately this helps us break down a lot of the polarity that's been happening in the country for the last several decades. Like, what does it matter? There's such an obsession with being right now. It's kind of this thing you see on Facebook a lot. I've been on Facebook now for 2 years because it became like an opinion machine to me, right? Where everybody's just screaming their opinions into the void. Nobody's minds are being changed. And people are so obsessed with being right? For what? What does it matter? What harm comes to me if instead of arguing and trying to be right, I just listen to people? Like, I can't think of any negatives that come from just listening to someone who has a completely different opinion than me. And I can think of a lot that could be gained from that. And so understanding that we're all going through this shared thing together, and that we have this in common, and it's been difficult on all of us, I hope that brings us together in a way that nothing else seems to have been able to do.
I think that's a really powerful point, right? I think shared experience, and we today, right now, in the middle of COVID, we're seeing the protesters who are getting frustrated with being sheltered in place, and you have the counter protesters, especially our great healthcare workers, trying to fight for society and people's lives. I mean,
that's right.
Doing this shared experience, how do you see like art or like immersive art helping or help us to get through these tough times?
Well, I mean, if you look at what's everybody turning to right now, right? Like, what we're seeing right now is a staggering increase in people interacting with the arts right now. If it's books, Netflix, movies, music, whatever, the British Museum, their online collections page has jumped from 2,000 daily visitors to 75,000, right? And museums around the world are seeing this, like a 700 to 1,000% increase in people interacting, even with museums and galleries, right? But that's one example of something that's more broad, right? So the arts are what everybody is turning to right now for connection and comfort. It's that thing that reminds us of our humanity. And yet, of course, we live in a country where the arts have never been considered to be an essential. And all of these organizations are suffering terribly. And many well-established organizations are facing very real ruin right now because of this, right? And not getting the support, even though the evidence shows that they are literally among the most essential things to us right now, at least by popular opinion.
It's interesting. There was an article in the Financial Times last week in which this columnist was comparing this moment as a portal, the pandemic portal, and it takes us from where we were to where we're going to be. And I find it interesting as you say that, especially in the last few years, we have downplayed the importance of art, especially in schools. When I was a kid, I got to go to an art class, a music class, and I went to public education, and they were wonderful.
Totally.
And I credit that for really awakening something in me. Also, we had a library at my school, and so I got to read all these wonderful books. And so what do we find in this moment where so many hospitals are without the resources they need because we've had it just-in-time shipments, we've been running lean. At the same time, we've been running lean in a different way when it comes to art and not celebrating its importance. And so I wonder from you, do you see this moment as maybe a portal in a beneficial way where we wake up and we see this outpouring of, like you said, people going to these museums and enjoying this moment? Maybe this will be a revitalization in some ways to bring us into what it means to be human.
Exactly. I mean, so we have the things that keep us alive, and they're very important, right? Like obviously medicine, food, all these things are vital, right? They are the things that make it possible for us to live. But then, and very selfishly, I would say, because I'm a lifelong artist and it's what I do, art gives us the reason why we want to live. This is the thing that makes life worthwhile. It even means a beautifully designed car. It doesn't matter. Like, art is all around us all the time. And when things are done well, they are done with art, And so this like the understanding that is the thing that makes our lives worth living and gives them, in many ways, their value, the shared experience with people we love, or even strangers. Again, the movie theater analogy, right? It doesn't matter that they're strangers, and it doesn't matter that in that theater, I don't care what anybody's politics are. I don't care what their belief systems are. I don't care what religion they hold, right? It's that the thing that lives below those things on the surface, right, are common shared humanity and sharing the experience with each other. that makes the difference. When people come to the House of Eternal Return, which is our exhibit in Santa Fe, I have never once heard of any talk about what separates us when people are in that shared experience with each other. There's just a common human sense of wonder, right? At this shared artistic experience, right? And that's an incredibly powerful thing, to find the things that connect us and focus on those as opposed to the things that separate us, which those things that separate us tend to be very shallow. The things that connect us are very strong and deep-rooted. We have much more in common than we have not in common with each other, all of us. Yeah.
For sure. You referenced House of the Eternal Return.
Mm-hmm.
For people that may not be familiar, do you want to share a little bit about what it is and how it came to be?
Absolutely, yeah. So I work for a company called Meow Wolf. Meow Wolf is based out of Santa Fe, New Mexico. It is a large-scale immersive arts organization. We built our first exhibit in Santa Fe, opening in, it was St. Patrick's Day of 2016. It is a 22,000 square foot exhibit, which is small in comparison to what we have in the works right now for future exhibits. I was the lead designer on the house itself. When you enter the exhibit, first thing you'll encounter when you walk into the exhibit is a 2-story tall, full-size Victorian house. And then from there, you are led to fantastical artistic spaces. We are an arts organization primarily. We are often compared to themed entertainment. There's a big difference, though, at least to me, a very big difference, in that there is no focal thing that you're lining up to see in our work, right? It's not a ride. Everything we build is the focus of the thing. And so everything is the focus, and it's about the art. And we work with a lot of collaborating artists in every area that we build exhibits in. So currently I am working on our Denver project, which is a very large 94,000 square foot new build building in Denver. And for that project, we are working with 115 plus local Denver artists. We're building rooms for them, for installation artists. They are going to be muralizing, they're going to be building sculptures, making video content. So we're all about creating an opportunity and a platform for artists to elevate them, right? We'll also take some up and coming artists and put them right next to a mid-career artist and show them in context with each other and show that they belong together. For the Denver exhibit, we project well over 1 million visitors a year. And so these artists are going to get eyeballs on their work like they never could have dreamed of before, right? So it's a big opportunity for them. And it is a way for the public to see art in a context they don't normally see it, right? Because of these very highly decorated and beautiful spaces that we kind of rebuild around the artist's work. So our exhibit in Santa Fe has been going strong since 2016. We've seen an increasing, we expected to see a kind of hitting apex and seeing it kind of level off at a lower, plateau, but we've seen nothing but growth. It's become the major kind of tourist destination for Santa Fe. And we're very excited for our future projects. Vegas, obviously we have new circumstances in the world. We're in the middle of a pandemic, but we're still on track to open Vegas, hopefully autumn or winter of this year.
Oh, wow.
And then Denver at autumn or winter the following year in 2021. Obviously, we'll see how this pandemic affects all of that, but that's still our schedule. So that's our work.
That's wonderful. That's amazing. And I was telling you right before this, my mother went and had such a great experience. So I think that's awesome. I was thinking back when I was in college, I had this great class. It was about theater, and we were talking about the definition of art. And it seems so basic, but how do you define art? And so my teacher said, it's anything that provokes an aesthetic response. And I wonder from you, you have this amazing immersive experience that you're talking about, almost unlike anything we've ever experienced, maybe comparing it to theme entertainment, but I don't even think that does it the justice it needs. So I wonder from you, when you have such divergent and diverse kinds of art, what is the aesthetic response? What do you want people to feel, to think when they encounter this wonderful art that you bring into the world?
Sure. Yeah, we have a couple things that we shoot for. One, we have an essential rule. We don't direct people how to experience our work, right? Once you buy a ticket, it's up to you. And that's something we build into everything that we do, all of our exhibits. There is no map, no guide. You are the creator of your experience. We're just creating the place within which you can create that experience. So there is no singular path. Yeah. Secondly, we are very interested in bringing out the kind of childlike wonder in the adult, but also the adult in the child, right? Like, we're not dumbing it down. And we are interested in making accessible art, absolutely. We call it the accessible unknown, which is meaning that the invitation is there, but what is beyond there is not clear. And we want to challenge people in that way. And then thirdly, we're very interested in, I would define the difference between like art and entertainment to me is that art has the aspect of the transformative experience. When you engage with art that has been done with great craft and done artfully, that interaction with that art leaves you transformed. You are not the same person you were before you engaged with it, because that reflection back is a reflection to aspects of yourself that maybe you haven't engaged with before or as deeply. And so the hope is that we call it mind bending as opposed to mind breaking. Mind breaking is too violent. Right. Mind bending, however, is the capacity for people to look at the world in a new way and kind of flex the way that they think about what's possible. We're also very interested in inspiring the next generation of artists. We want, look, so, you know, some people have said like about our work, they're like, it seems a little raw around the edges, et cetera, and like, you know, kind of unfinished quality to a lot of it. This is incredibly intentional, right? We don't want our work to look too slick. We want people to be able to look at what we do and say, I could do that, you know? Like, that is powerful. And then for them to go home and actually do it, which we've had happen. We've had a group of people who visited us from Texas not long after we opened, went home and made their own installation. We went and visited them, ended up hiring a couple of them to work with us because they were really good. But, you know, that, like, the ability to inspire people to do the thing and to be able to see, like, the craft that went into it and how it was done, that's like, to me, that's all the reward I ever need for the work that we do. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think, Chadney, that you really hit that out of the park because, you know, I don't consider myself like an artsy kind of guy. And, you know, I had the pleasure to actually go to see the House of Eternal Return, and it was phenomenal. I can't believe how sucked in, engrossed. I was like examining all these little things. I mean, I could probably spend a couple of days there, honestly.
Sure.
And, you know, this is about changing the story. It definitely changed my story. And I think other people I saw there, they were so immersed by it as well, it changed their story. But you touched upon something I thought was also interesting. You're also changing the story for like artists, right?
That's right. Well, so, you know, we're in the experience economy, right? We're right in it. You know, it's a kind of, the book was written in the 90s. Here we are in it. You know, millennials now, I mean, if you look at the trajectory of money that is spent on experience economy, it is just like, the graph is like this. Millennials are, you know, are not spending money on material goods in the same way that my generation did. That's for sure. I'm Gen X, you know, and at all. And they are $1 trillion economy, and it's all on experience right now. That's what they're all about. And that graph keeps moving upward like that. People are interested in experience. And what does that mean? That means it's not about a thing. It's about changing who I am, right? An experience, when it is meaningful, if I have an experience that is I go do laundry. That's one thing, right? But that's not the experience that people are looking for. They're looking for an experience where it's like, I go to Machu Picchu, you know? And when I go there, I am transformed. I have a more expansive awareness of the world. And ultimately, in a positive sense, it's also a shared experience. You're going with people you love. You'll be there with other humans that are also having that transformative experience, right? Like that thing is at the core of where our economies are moving and where our interests as humans are moving, is that shared experience and just the accessibility of experience, right? Which is part of what makes this especially hard right now, this pandemic, is that is like, man, is there a lid put on that? Like obviously the hiking trails are packed, you know, because people are trying to get out and just have some kind of it. But we're seeing a lot of it online as well, as we talked about.
I love the way you put that, by the way. And I also love the way you talked about mind bending. And I was even looking on your site earlier and looking at some of the different books you suggest when it comes to mind bending. As a person who grew up watching The Twilight Zone and anything that's science fiction, I'm very into the mind bending aspect, and I know Neil is too. So with that, if we can mind bend a little bit just for a moment here, let's talk about the future. Let's say we're 50 years from now, 100 years from now, 1,000 years from now, if we're even around. What might the art look like? Let's like really bend our mind here. What could that story look like, the future of art?
Yeah. So, okay. So for example, and I'm going to take you on a journey. This is my journey there. So
Sure.
For the Denver exhibit, I'm doing active work on getting the exhibit outside of the exhibit, the experience of the exhibit. And what that means is using technologies so that people can have a continued experience of the story that they engaged with in that building, in the city of Denver, right? This could include renting spaces that exist in the city where people can actually go to that space and it's the office for this thing. There could also be like kind of clues hidden throughout the city on kind of narrative journeys, but it also could just be performance interactivities where it's these kind of pop-ups and staying connected with people to understand that like, oh my God, this thing's happening over here that relates to the story that happened in the building. This is the beginning of a thing, right? There's also technologies. When we look at the future of AR technologies, which we've definitely looked in VR and AR, and we're kind of have a lot of interest in. It's easy to imagine a future where, let's say the next level from now is where we have a common, let's say it goes back to some kind of Google Glasses or something like that, which is actually Apple is talking about, that they are already seeing the future when the phone will be phased out and they move towards something like this. Where you have an augmented reality that is just ubiquitous, right? You are on a hike and you look at a plant and you're like, I wonder what kind of plant that is. Oh, there comes the Latin name. Here comes the name for the thing, et cetera, et cetera. You can get information on it, right? If you're walking around trying to find directions to a place, boop, they appear and you follow them, et cetera. It's easy to imagine that as a next step in our future kind of technologies engagement. The step beyond that, then it's not hard to imagine a day when we can create culture through those technologies. And what I mean by that is a group of kids could reskin a city to fit their goth aesthetic, right? And they always walk around in this city reskinned, like in this thing they've designed together, and they're all dressed it, and here are creatures flying around it, and they live like that, right? Like this is how they engage with the world, right? And there's other group of kids, they're like way into Disney. And so they are like buying in on some Disney kind of skinning thing and they live in that world, et cetera, et cetera. Then you kind of extrapolate beyond that. This is already generations old, people have been doing this. The designers of buildings don't even bother decorating the exterior anymore, right? It's just these blank white facades because nobody actually looks at them as they are anyway. It doesn't matter, Yeah. This kind of creativity is something that is like, this is the thing that we're thinking about when we think about the future of what's possible, right? So when I talked about getting outside the building and bringing the thing outside the building, that is the like kindergarten baby step that's leading toward the futures of how we are going to interact with technologies, which we know they're playing a bigger and bigger part in everything that we do, and how those are going to be essential to the artistic experience that we have with the world and the way that we engage with each other and create culture with each other, right? And so this is something that we're very interested in, and actually some of us talk about quite a bit in these kind of high-level meetings about the future of our company and the trajectories we'd like to see it move toward and how we want to like potentially be at the vanguard of that thing, and empowering people to take creative agency for themselves, and create the world that they want to live in.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. I mean, so with that, to me, that's a whole different way of being and doing. So let's go with that mind-bending idea there. Let's imagine, I don't know what the time frame is you're thinking about this, but let's say it's 50 years from now. If there is a world in which, young or old, we can create our realities in ways that just boggle the mind for the person right now. Obviously, you mentioned we live in a very challenging time, COVID-19. It's exacerbating a lot of the disparities, divisions that we have, especially politically. How could you think, if we lived in a world and this vision that you're portraying here of art in this manner, do you think that it has the ability to connect us, to resolve these old tensions that didn't just happen, by the way, in COVID-19, but have really plagued us, all of our humanity? Could this begin to help with social unrest, to begin to right the wrongs of inequality? Do you see this as a vehicle for good and for mutual compassion?
I sure hope so. Where does culture come from? It obviously comes from our ancestors and the places we're born, but it also, so that's kind of coming from below. And in a certain sense, if you want to speak metaphorically, but it also can come at us from above, right? Culture can come at us from media. See, like MSNBC and Fox News, right? They are creating a kind of culture, right? And they're creating a kind of team mentality, right? This us against them kind of mentality, right? And so there are cultures that are built around those things as well, and cultures can be a kind of series of overlapping Venn diagrams. It's like, yes, I'm Polish American, which I am, but I'm also this, and I'm also this, and you know what I mean? And so like how those things overlap and how we define ourselves, right? So these ways that we define ourselves, many of them right now are kind of being delivered to us, right? My hope for the future is that as we get more agency through technology, which we already see trends of technology doing this, that we have more control over how we define ourselves, right? And that we have more agency in that thing. We already see how technologies are kind of taking away the need for professionals and giving that to people. I mean, Airbnb is an example of that. We had hoteliers, right? And they were the professionals who did this thing, but now that is being kind of taken by common people, and anybody can do this thing, right? Lyft and Uber are another example of that. We have professional kind of drivers, and now we are taking that. It's technologies that allow us to do this, right? So we already see this, how technologies are allowing people to take agency over their lives and over services that used to be held by professionals. So I think that my hope is that technologies continue that trend in delivering agency to all of us, to take control over our lives and the means of our livelihood and our creative voice.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. I think as we kind of wrap up here,
sure.
I love the mind-bending motif. I mean, that's something you got to do to innovate, to disrupt, to change the story.
Absolutely.
If you had one piece of advice to share with our audience on how to be a good mind bender.
Look, I mean, we're in a moment of opportunity here, right? Like, this pandemic is one of the most monumental events in human history. World War II was powerful, but there were a lot of countries that weren't involved in the war and were still living their best lives. Do you know what I mean? This affects all of us. This will be a standout moment in human history. We are living through something that is literally going to be a lightning rod in human history. So it's kind of like, and the world was moving forward at this, it was like a juggernaut of constant forward momentum, right? And suddenly it came to a screeching halt, this kind of Control-Alt-Delete, that happened on the world right now. And it's come to a screeching halt. And this is our opportunity to reboot, to reset, right? To reimagine the story of our world and our relationship to one another. one thing we know for sure is that we'll all be changed by this pandemic, right? Like all of us will be changed, but the exact nature of that change hasn't been written. That's for us to decide. And not our governments, but us. And so we have the power and the potential to reimagine how we do this together. And I think we need to take advantage of that. Yeah, because it's powerful and it's rare. This isn't going to happen again. Who knows when the next time that something of this magnitude will happen that gives us an opportunity to reimagine our futures.
Hopefully next time we don't need something like this to reimagine our futures.
Exactly, man. Yeah.
And I love that phrase, the Control-Alt-Delete moment. That's just a great title, by the way. Well, what you're talking to us about really sounds like empowerment as well as inclusion.
Absolutely.
And we're just so grateful for this amazing interview. And thank you for taking the time to chat with us. So thank you. And how can people get in touch with you, and how can people visit, what your offerings are and learn more about Meow Wolf and all the great stuff that you're doing?
Visiting me is boring, but visiting Meow Wolf is not. So I would encourage people to go to meowwolf.com, and a lot of information exists on that site, links to a lot of the work we're doing. We are actively working on ways we are just as challenged in this time as anybody else. And being an arts organization, we have that as well. But we are actively looking for ways to continue our engagement with the community, to continue to inspire people. And please check out our website, meowwolf.com, and look for kind of interactivities there and events, and also as a way to see like the kind of what I feel like important work we're doing, how it's evolving. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Awesome. Thank you, Chadney. This was fantastic.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
All right.
Hey, if you like today's show, please remember to hit the like button and leave a comment.
If you've been enjoying the Changing the Story podcast series, please subscribe and share it with your friends.
Thank you.